It's been alleged and submitted to the jury that on January 10th of 2009, the defendant was driving at 135 miles an hour northbound on State Highway 249, just inside the Montgomery County line, north of Harris County. He approached an intersection, Pratorius Circle, where a family had been in town celebrating Curtis Edwards' birthday. He just lost his wife, and they came in to try to cheer him up by celebrating his birthday. They were headed southbound towards Tomball to go and have lunch. They took every safety precaution that they could at the stop sign, looked to make sure that there was no traffic coming, came to a complete stop. Karla Sexton was even buckling in people to make sure that they were all buckled. They started to go through the intersection. It took them about 2 seconds to get across the intersection into lane number 3. At that point, the defendant came over the apex of the hill at 135 miles per hour and struck into them and T-boned their vehicle at approximately 117 miles per hour. Today, we had alleged and shown that the defendant was attempting to race and catch up to a motorcycle. A motorcycle left the intersection before the defendant, took off at an extremely high rate of speed. The defendant was several cars back and was trying to catch up to the motorcycle. Witnesses testified that he was about 5 seconds behind the motorcycle is when the crash occurred.
Put into perspective for us how fast he was going, and talk a little bit about this car that he was in and the purpose for him buying the car.
He was in a high-performance vehicle. It was a Chevy Cobalt that had aftermarket parts attached to it to increase its speed, to increase RPMs, just built for speed, built for racing. Had no business being driven on the streets of Montgomery County or anywhere in that sort of a manner.
Did he put the parts on it, or did he buy it like that?
The evidence is that he put some of the parts on it. He purchased it from somebody else in that condition with some of the parts already on it, and then he altered it and put some additional parts on which increased the performance capabilities of the vehicle. The data recorder evidence which showed he was doing 135, also showed that he was close to 6,500 RPMs, and that he had the gas pedal floored pretty much all the way down. So he was flooring it and doing top speed of about 135 miles per hour.
He testified that he knows speeding is wrong, but that he didn't understand the consequences. Your reaction to that?
I'm going to leave that one up to the jury. If you know that racing is bad, if you know that speeding is bad, and you know that driving at 135 an hour is beyond bad, I'm sure a jury is going to look at that pretty closely and give that some pretty skeptical, I'm sure they'll have a skeptical opinion of that.
How egregious is this case in your mind?
Just listening to the testimony, all these crash cases are horrible, but when you've got a whole family wiped out, and Karla Sexton, who's lost her beloved husband, and her mother and her father and her uncle, it's just a horrible, horrible tragedy. In fact, this case is the worst crash in Montgomery County history, with 5 people killed. And it's the worst, one of the worst racing fatality cases in the state of Texas. I think there is one other crash, a racing crash, where 5 people were killed up in northeast Texas.
What message do you want to have sent with this case?
Well, I'm certainly concerned about the message that gets sent to the defendant. I want him to learn that the consequences of his actions were wrong. But more importantly, to the public out there, I want the jury to send a message to the public that we're not going to tolerate this sort of conduct in our county, that we're going to send a message to youthful people, elderly people, everybody, that we're going to protect our citizens. And specifically, I want a message to be sent to people out there who drive recklessly, who drive carelessly, and who race on public roads, that there are severe consequences. If you kill somebody, you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. But you're also going to have to pay criminal consequences, prison time, or whatever we ask for, whatever the jury receives for engaging in this sort of conduct. It's a life-altering occasion for everybody.
Describe the defendant for us. I mean, it seems like you're kind of painting them, trying to paint him as obsessed with cars, obsessed with racing. Is that who he is, or what? kind of describe who you believe he is.
That's who he was. He belonged to, he would follow a racing website. Every car that he's ever owned, he got one car on average every 10 months of his life. And most of those cars were high-performance racing-type vehicles, including this Chevy Cobalt. So that's who he was. And there's 4 speeding tickets that the defendant admitted to on the jury stand, or on the witness stand, is evidence of that. And that's what we wanted to convey to the jury, that that's who he was before, and now, although he's suffered serious injuries as a result of the crash himself, I think he only feels sorry for himself. Those were crocodile tears that he was shedding up on the witness stand today, because he didn't cry when Karla Sexton testified or when Kayla's grandfather testified. He only cried when he got up there and talked about his injury.
What about the racing in Montgomery County? Does it seem like it's picking up some? And you hope this will put a nix to some of that?
You know, since it seems like reckless driving and racing in Montgomery County is getting worse. More and more people, not only young people, but also old people. We had one fatality in December that we responded to, which is about a mile north of this particular fatality. So for some reason that stretch of road is deadly. People go to race there. It does seem like it's becoming an epidemic in Montgomery County. I would venture to say we have just as many racing fatalities in this county than in Harris County, which is 10 times the size of Montgomery County. And that is really bad. That's why we're trying this case. That's why we want to get our message out to the jury and out to the public about the consequences of this sort of conduct.
That was that guy in not a Camaro, but a Corvette, right?
It was a Corvette.
Yeah.
And you also had the 2 kids over here at CONROE High School that they're working on right now. They've indicted the CONROE High School.